clever pun.
Hey, fellow 90s kids with little to no functional memory of the 90s, and welcome to CubeCast, the podcast all about the most beloved and revered console of all time, the Nintendo GameCube. My name is Josh Wallen, and as always, on the other end of the tin cannon string, it's the Admiral Bobbery to my coops, Mr. Hyle Russell.
Hello and welcome to the Kongversation. What's happening to my show?
Folks, today we're here to discuss the long overdue return of the character we've all been hoping and dreaming would return to Mario Kart, and after 15 years, we're finally getting him back, Petey Piranha. Hyle, I've got to say, I am hyped.
Oh, I know what you're doing. I'm on board now. Yeah, I like how he's wearing the diaper. It's my favorite part of the character, and they brought it back. The cloth diaper is back on Petey's crotch.
It's just, I really felt like his appearance in Mario Party Superstars, while it was great to see him again, it didn't really capture the full essence, the full soul of the character that we all grew up with and love. So it's just, God, I can't tell you how much it warmed my heart to see him back in Mario Kart after all this time.
Yeah, I can't keep this up, Josh. I'm sorry. You've thrown me off my game entirely here. I have a rhythm and I have a flow.
The bit has outlived its usefulness now.
I'm a babe lost in the woods right now. What can I say? So, welcome to the Kongversation, Josh.
Thank you.
Stinky Ape Summer continues on this, the actual first day of summer here in the Northern Hemisphere. And we actually got our Nintendo Direct in June, a week later than we normally would. So much more prompt and timely than last year. So good on you, Nintendo. And we are streaming right now live on our Twitch channel at twitch.tv/DKVine. Hello, everyone. Hello.
I like Fizz Tap in the chat was playing along with the bit. That's nice.
Oh, well, that's always good. Yeah, I would have played along with a bit, but you didn't tell me you were going to do a bit, and so like you didn't tell me you were going to do that bit. So
right.
I was just like, oh, what do I have to talk about when it comes to Petey Piranha? Not much. Not much.
No, me either. I had very little beyond the name.
So yeah, hello to everyone in the live stream on Twitch. I see some familiar names in there: Copbox, Malik, Elsie, L. Apin, or Elsie Lappin. I'm sorry, I never can remember which of those. We'll be checking in throughout the episode with the live stream. And hello to everyone listening to this on your normal Kongversation platforms, as this episode will be uploaded after the live stream is over. So, Josh, thank you for joining me. Just to be clear, this was not necessarily the plan today for you to be here, for us to even do a conversation. So I, of course, earmarked the possibility there would be a Nintendo Direct at some point this week, but we didn't know until 24 hours beforehand when Nintendo tweeted out on all of their international accounts, hey, the Nintendo Direct is coming 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 7 a.m. Pacific. And, of course, 24 hours notice isn't really great when, say, you've booked a dentist appointment for Wednesday, June 21st at 8:30 in the morning. And so that leaves you a day to, like, figure out, am I going to get back in time? Like, what am I going to do? Oh, I guess I can maybe miss the first few minutes of the Direct. I'm sure we won't get any news. And so...
Yeah, you are not the only gaming journalist, independent Donkey Kong or otherwise, who I've seen kind of like raise some ire about Nintendo's tendency to do these with very, very little heads up lately.
Yeah, and I realize Nintendo does not give a damn about the lowly Donkey Kong journalist out there. They just they don't care. Like, they don't care. But like, with Xbox, we have like 2 months heads up for their showcases. Maybe that's an exaggeration, but it's not much of an exaggeration. With Nintendo, it's basically drop everything or just catch up when you get off work or when you get, out of your funeral you're attending or whatever is going on in your life.
When you wake up when they do them this early.
Yeah, so I basically have to drop everything when I can when they announce a Nintendo Direct. But with this, like, I've been waiting to get into the dentist because I've been putting off going back since the pandemic, and I know I've like lost the filling or something in my teeth. So like I had to go, right? I had to go. And so I basically had to just let go a little bit, which is really hard for me, being the editor-in-chief of DK Vine, to let go and just think, well, it's out of my control. So I have to go to the dentist, and then I will just let the chips fall where they may. It's a big growth opportunity for me, Josh, but it was not easy. And while past is not necessarily prelude when it comes to these things, I don't tend to be entirely superstitious when it comes to this stuff. Although I have to report that I saw no bears on my bear hike, which I did get to partake in last Tuesday. I finally went on my belated E3 bear hike, which came in no service to a Banjo-Kazooie reveal or anything, but I was like, this might pay off for Nintendo, but saw no bears, so that should have, tipped the hat a little bit towards what was actually going to be shown off today. But the last time...
I know you saw bears before Returns was revealed.
Yeah.
Other than that, when was the last time you did?
Banjo and Kazooie in Super Smash Brothers.
Yeah.
A couple other big ones. I saw bears. So it doesn't always shake out like this, but generally there's a pretty good hit rate when it comes to see bears, get good DKU news. And by good DKU news, I don't mean, a new Mario Party is announced or something. I mean something earth-shattering, something that will blow your hair back kind of DKU news. But yeah, the last time I was at a dentist, Josh, during a Nintendo Direct, the only time I can remember that they've actually intersected was the Nintendo Direct where we got Tropical Freeze for Switch announced and Donkey Kong Adventure revealed. So, like I said, past is not necessarily prelude when it comes to this kind of thing, but I was thinking, if ever there was a time where we would get substantial DKU news in a Nintendo Direct, it's when I am otherwise occupied. And so a part of me, a small sliver, inside of me that always thinks, don't walk under the ladder, don't step on that crack, don't, cross a black cat on the 13th, that happens to be a Friday. The small part of me was thinking, this might bode well for us, the fact that I will be in a dentist chair, but I was trying not to be stressed about this because my obligations to DK Vine consume all. And so I was like, I might miss part of the Direct. I can catch up. It's fine. And I even sent out a social media blast before I left saying, hey, I might be a little bit late. Please understand. But I was trying to put all things Donkey Kong and Nintendo out of my head in that dentist chair. And I hate being at the dentist just because I don't like having my mouth open that long. And I know that's weird for me to say considering how long conversations can sometimes run, but just having to basically dislocate my jaw so somebody can dig in there and jab me with a metal hook. It's not my favorite thing in the world. So I was trying to relax. I was trying to focus on anything but Donkey Kong. And as soon as that dentist chair went back and I looked up at the bright lights above me, most dentists, they have a radio playing, right? Like some sort of just local AM or FM station, usually some sort of mix of contemporary and classic music. Well,
God, I haven't been to the dentist since before the pandemic either. So
yeah.
I'm like, do they? Does that? I don't remember.
Well, the song that immediately started to play when I went back was John Cougar Mellencamp's Jack and Diane. And I don't know how familiar you are, Josh, or how familiar our listeners are. If Jeff was here, he would know where this bit is going. But that song immediately starts with old JCM saying, little ditty about Jack and Diane. And of course, I focus on the little ditty, 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 ditty. And so I immediately am put into this like blind panic of, are they going to announce Diddy Kong Racing for the Switch? Or so it didn't really work is what I'm saying. But I got out of there. I'm going to get my filling refilled on August 8th, King K. Rool and Super Smash Bros. Day. And I made it back with mere minutes to spare, which in hindsight might have been my mistake. I should have actually missed the Direct so big DK stuff would get announced, because that's the way the universe works. But
okay, so August 8th is the official date. It has been revealed that will be when the next Nintendo Direct is happening. So mark it on your calendars.
Yeah, I doubt it. I very much doubt it. But yeah, we'll get something announced that day. That's 7 days after the Donkey Kong Lego products come out, so who knows. But yeah, so I made it back to the Direct, Josh, and I have to say, like, the whole ordeal of going to the dentist, worrying about going to the dentist, worrying about missing part of the Direct, actually helped me put myself at ease a little bit more than just sitting, like, waking up, strolling into my office, sitting down, and watching the Direct would have done otherwise. I went through this whole adventure beforehand, so I felt okay.
See, and that's like sort of like, I didn't have anything to do this morning. I didn't have anywhere to go. I didn't have anything in particular like going on. So I was just doing everything I could to manifest a Donkey Kong something. Yeah. I just wanted to manifest Donkey Kong news. I once again made my summoning circle out of DK Bonkos and various Donkey Kong Country related games, and posted that on Twitter. I first did that nearly 2 years ago in September of 2021, but I made a new one. And then I spent the morning, I watched the original Nintendo Direct, the DKC Secrets Revealed VHS on DK Vine's YouTube channel. And then I listened to this very inspiring mashup of the DK rap with Hallelujah.
Oh yeah,
that is also on YouTube.
The heavily overplayed, overcovered Leonard Cohen song, right?
Yeah, the top comment on that video is, "It's amazing how you took one of the most beautiful songs of all time and combined it with Hallelujah."
Yeah, like I'm not about the whole summoning thing, because at this point, my main objective whenever a Nintendo Direct is announced is basically community management, meaning I have to temper expectations, which isn't how I normally operated back in the day. I would go all in. We're going to get 8 things revealed. We're going to go down the list and have a litany of just gonzo announcements, just ticking off all of our niche boxes. And, that would be great fun. But I know that's not going to be the case, and I have to be a responsible steward of the Donkey Kong fandom, given my, place of prominence within it as the editor-in-chief of DK Vine. I can't lead people astray. It's not my in my job duties to do so. So last night I actually did this sprawling social media thread where I told everyone, "Hey, we're probably not going to get anything revealed tomorrow, but this is why it's okay." And I wanted to get out ahead of everything, because there were a leak or two here or there that seemed credible. And I was like, well, if this is true, we are not getting Donkey Kong today. And so I wanted to basically talk everyone down and let them know, even if we don't get any reveal today, things are still going to be okay. And there's a difference, Josh, between telling people that and actually feeling it yourself. But coming out of the Direct, God, I feel good. I feel surprisingly calm and zen-like right now. And I have nothing to show for it. I have no personal winnings in this Nintendo Direct. There's things that I think look cool, but do they personally impact the life of me? No. And
I'm very revealed to hear that because, I mean, I don't typically go in quite so hard on being hopeful about something like this.
Yeah.
But I think part of the reason that I was in this case, one, it's just kind of fun to indulge in that sort of thing every once in a while. You can have a little hype. But also, I was very hopeful, sort of like on your behalf and on the behalf of DK Vine. Like I was very hopeful that there would be news this time. So hearing that you've come out of it and you're feeling positive and you're feeling zen-like and you're doing okay, that makes me very happy.
Yeah, I'd be doing better if we had a new Donkey Kong game to discuss, obviously.
Well, sure.
Because that would mean great things for me and DK Vine. Like when business is good is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
So basically now I'm like, well, I have to now kill the next half year coming up with bullshit nostalgia, which is fine. I'm good at it, but it'd be easier to basically just do a half dozen conversations on the upcoming Donkey Kong game and get, thousands of listens on each episode because everybody's into it, but it's fine. We've been in worse shape before, and I think right now this Direct had a weird effect of making me very optimistic about the state of Donkey Kong, considering that Donkey Kong was completely shut out of this Direct. And I'll explain what that means as we go through the Direct. We will be talking about some of the games announced today, and I think they're worth talking about, even if they don't actually fall under the authority of DK Vine. Like, we're not going to be covering these games, but I will admit there are a few that I was like, oh, that's cool, good for them.
I walked out of the Direct like, of course Donkey Kong was like the number one thing I wanted,
yeah,
but I got so much else that I really have nothing to complain about, so that's where I'm at coming out of it.
Yeah, I thought of you, Josh, when I saw Sonic.
Yeah?
Yeah, I was like, oh, Josh must be smiling right now. He sees Sonic on the screen. Good for him.
Sure.
I mean, does it make you feel good that whenever I see Sonic in any context, you're my first thought?
Oh yeah, I've had that effect on many people throughout my life. Weirdly enough.
I know.
To this day, every once in a while, this used to happen to me all the time. But every once in a while, somebody that I have not seen since first grade or somewhere like early in elementary school comes up to me, somehow recognizes me despite the decades that it's been since then. I have no idea who they are, but they're like, "You're the Sonic guy."
Yeah, and I'm always pleased as punch, as my grandma says, when somebody associates me with Donkey Kong or Banjo-Kazooie or Conker or Rare. Just, oh yeah, thank you. I'm glad I've made my name in this community. But yeah, I thought of you and I was like, well, at least Josh is smiling right now. That makes me feel good. But yeah, normally, traditionally, these E3s, this isn't an E3, but this is a not E3. This is basically the stand-in for an E3 Direct. Usually these E3 presentations from Nintendo that, you walk away with 4 Mario games announced, they leave DK Vine feeling rather deflated. Because they're like, yeah, 4 Mario games, but no Donkey Kong games. How am I supposed to take that? I feel good right now, Josh, and that's there are a couple reasons why I feel so pumped at the moment. Maybe not pumped. Pumped is something else, but I feel like I'm meditating by a forest stream right now. There are a few reasons why I feel that way, but let's talk about some of the games announced. The aforementioned 4 Mario games. And we'll get into why I think that bodes well for Donkey Kong. So, I already made this joke on social media. The joke is therein in the thumbnail art, the key art for this episode of The Kongversation. If you're listening to us on Twitch, or if you're watching this on YouTube, or listening on SoundCloud, the one Kong, the only Kong that was shown off on this Nintendo Direct. Like, if I made the wish on a monkey's paw or an elephant genie, and I was like, you know, all I want is a place of prominence for one Kong in this Nintendo Direct. Of course, the be careful what you wish for, you know, life lesson that would come about was the most ridiculous Kong, that's the most inconsequential Kong to our fandom, to DK Vine. And sure enough, Josh, sure enough, that came to pass. Yeah, the one Kong that was revealed in this Nintendo Direct was Chained Kong from off of Super Mario RPG.
I can't. By the way, listen, when that trailer was playing,
yeah,
it was one of those moments where, and we've talked about this sort of thing before, where you were so, what you are seeing is so far beyond what you considered to be the realm of possibility that your brain does not quite accept it as real. Nonetheless, while in that state, when Chained Kong showed up, much like you see Sonic and think of me, I saw him and thought of you.
Did you think I was gnashing my teeth, my newly polished teeth, and just like pounding my fist on the floor, weeping?
I didn't think so. No, that came later in the Direct.
Yeah, I know which part you're talking about, but
yeah.
Yeah, I was even thinking when this started playing, so for me, the surrealness of it was mitigated by the fact that I'm not really super hardcore into just baseline Mario fandom. So for me, this is really cool as like this interesting thing. Like, wow, they actually are doing this. Holy shit. But my immediate thought, once I processed what I was seeing, was, I wonder if they're going to show Chained Kong, just as a joke in my head, because I'd be like, at least then I could make a joke about that. At least then I would have something to sink my teeth into. And sure enough, they actually showed goddamn Chained Kong, which, for those not in the know, Chained Kong was this weird enemy in Super Mario RPG, like designed to look like Rare's Donkey Kong. And this is kind of a historical footnote because this is before the Rare style Donkey Kong was even appearing in Mario games. This predates Mario Kart 64. So to see a Rare style Donkey Kong in this context, even though he's not Donkey Kong, was still this like surreal thing. And I even had the debate, in 1996, hey, should we buy Super Mario RPG? Does Super Mario RPG count in the canon of Rare's Donkey Kong? And ultimately,
welcome to our Super Mario RPG Tribunal episode.
No, ultimately we came down to the fact that this is just an invented Kong, not by Rare, and it's just like this, like plausibly an NPC, like a drone NPC, like not somebody who's actually like a real character. But anyway, Chain Kong, has been a point of contention on DK Vine throughout the years. Like, hey, why don't you give any credence to Chained Kong or Gorilla, the variant of Chained Kong in Super Mario RPG? But
yeah, as a kid, that was like DK Vine explaining how and why Chained Kong was not part of the DKU was pretty fundamental to me coming to understand what exactly the rules were.
Yeah. I mean, I am bemused by Chain Kong as this concept, as this remote thing. I don't have any emotional attachment to Chained Kong. And Chained Kong is very weird, too, because I don't understand the lore of Chained Kong. Like, who has chained this Kong? Why is this Kong a captive? Why does this Kong have a crown of thorns made of metal on his head?
It is very strange,
Yeah. And that's the first thing I looked for, is how much does this remastered version of Chain Kong keep to the fidelity of Chain Kong's original design? It's basically spot on. The only difference I can ascertain is Chain Kong might not have his weird Klingon forehead ridge that the render of Chain Kong had in the original, and the nostrils might be raised a little bit. But it's important to note that Chain Kong does not have Donkey Kong's modern nose. So there you go. This is a conversation I will be having with Cameron later on. Cameron is the in-house expert on the fluctuations of Kong design throughout the years. But yeah, Super Mario RPG is getting remade, what the kids call remastered, for Nintendo Switch by Square, by Square Enix, which is a big deal. And Josh, I'm not necessarily a chained Kong to this game. Like, I appreciate it for what it is. And I rented it. I tried to get into it. This is before I really understood what RPGs were. And I was like, why doesn't this play like anything Mario has ever played like before? I appreciate it more now, but more on an intellectual level. So to see this back, though, is just so heartwarming. And I think it's because Super Mario RPG represents perhaps the very last gasp of me being interested in the lore of Mario. Like, the direction of Mario before Super Mario 64 kind of watered everything down in my mind.
Yeah, I'm sort of, I had not a totally dissimilar experience with it, but I think while my initial impressions may have been similar, what I ended up taking away from it was quite different. In my case, I had missed out on the whole period where Mario was like the initial boom of Mario, the entire NES era. And so to me, I got Super Mario All-Stars and Super Mario World all at once. Those were both pack-ins with my Super Nintendo. So like there wasn't really any like arc to my experience with Mario. I didn't understand that the games on All-Stars were in fact remakes of older games. And so when Mario RPG came out, I liked Mario. I wasn't nearly as crazy about it or as into it as I was Sonic and Donkey Kong, for example. But I liked it just fine. But Super Mario RPG, to me, for one thing, like you said, like I had absolutely no idea what an RPG was. I didn't know what that stood for. I didn't know the very first thing I did in the game was try to jump on a Goomba or on a, oh no, what are they called? on the little turtle guys in Bowser's Keep at the very beginning of the game. Try to jump on them, go into a turn-based combat system, have absolutely no idea what's going on.
Right, like why do I just have to sit there and let them attack me? What?
Yeah, right. But what Super Mario RPG did was give me this version of Mario's world and characters and sort of the whole tone of the game that really gave me an insight into what Mario like can actually like mean. I think
sure.
It gave me a better understanding of the appeal of the series on something other than just a gameplay fundamental level. And the reason that it's so special to see it back is because Super Mario RPG wound up being the only time that specific vision of Mario's world ever existed.
Yeah.
Not partly because, of course, it was co-developed by Square,
sure,
who, as I understand, owned some of the characters. And also because, like you said, what was it, 4 months later, Super Mario 64 came out. And of course, that was far more influential on the future direction of the series.
Yeah. at the time, it felt like Super Mario RPG was this big thing that would influence later games. Like the introduction of Mallow and Geno, like they felt like big new characters, right, in Mario's world. So even though I couldn't get into the gameplay of Super Mario RPG at the time, I was still intrigued by those characters. I was still hooked by the story it was telling. And it didn't hurt personally that they were clearly sort of aping, no pun intended, Rare's ACM style with the game's graphics, and it was really cool to see Mario sort of rendered in that look, Mario in his world. And so it felt like Mario RPG was going to be a bigger domino that would fall. Well, yeah, some analogy, some metaphor. It felt like it would definitely impact the Mario series going forward, and then it turned out to be more of a one-off because the next RPG, the game that was purported to be Super Mario RPG 2 was Paper Mario, which kind of went in a different direction. And, I look back to that time when you're a kid at a very formative age, those things tend to loom larger. So Mallow and Geno always loom larger in my head. Everything from Super Mario RPG, those characters, that iconography, it means more to me than a lot of the stuff that would appear later in Mario games, like PD Piranha, for example. So,
absolutely,
to see all of that back rendered in loving fashion again is staggering to me. Like, I'm so happy for the fans of this game. So, in the live stream, LCA Lapin or LCL Apin, I'm so sorry, says that the original composer, Yoko Shimomura, is even coming back. She's the Super Mario RPG parallel to David Wise coming back for Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. And to continue,
I was so happy for that.
To continue that train of thought, though, to continue that linkage to stuff I know by heart, this would also be the equivalent of, say, Timber and Pipsy showing up in a Donkey Kong game, because these are characters owned by Square, right? Like,
exactly.
There is this complicated ownership of these very much Mario characters, but Mario characters that Nintendo can never do anything with unless Square's on board. And that's much of the cast of Diddy Kong Racing, sans Diddy, Crunch, and sometimes Tricky. So it's very cool to see, because this would be the equivalent of having a remastered Diddy Kong Racing or something to that effect. And so I really am so happy for the fans. Like, this is something where I can't even be jealous. Like, oh, I wish we could have this feeling. I'm just like, no, I'm just happy for the fans of Super Mario RPG. I'm happy for the fans of this corner of Mario's world that is so underserved, that is so unappreciated.
I mean, like I said earlier, I figured if we're ever going to get anything, it's going to be Geno and Ultimate.
Yeah.
And we didn't get that. I mean, I was, I wasn't like torn up about it. I've gotten so many characters in Smash that I thought I would never get. I have, again, it's another case where I have nothing to complain about, but the fact that it didn't happen there, I kind of had accepted on some level, not with no cynicism, actual acceptance. That, this game is more than 25 years old. It was a one-off. It was the result of this weird era where Square and Nintendo worked together on a Mario game. And I don't think that we're ever... I didn't really think that that we'd ever see it again. Yeah. Other than, of course, like, NSO. I figured it'd come out on NSO eventually, but... So yeah, just this completely and utterly bowled me over. And I do want to talk about the way that this remake looks.
Oh yes,
because,
please.
Oh god, it's not just the sort of standard Mario look in any way. You were talking earlier about that early ACM look that you really only saw in video games from, I would say, 1994 with the release of Donkey Kong Country up until like pretty early in the 5th generation. There were still games. Well, I guess there were still games as late as like the GBA that were doing the pre-rendered thing. But generally, what I love about the way this remaster looks is that it looks the way that Super Mario RPG looked to me in 1996. It looks the way that I remember it.
I'm so glad you said this, because I didn't want to seem like the crazy one. You know, whenever remasters come up, like, oh, I want Banjo-Kazooie remastered, whatever that means, right? Part of the trepidation I have towards that is, one, you know, I'm not getting any younger. I want a new Banjo-Kazooie game. Don't just give me the same reheated leftovers and tell me it's a gourmet meal. But also, nothing can compare to the way a game looked to you as a child. And so any deviation or any attempt to better it will inevitably make you feel more hollow, because your mind filled in those gaps perfectly. And so when you played Banjo-Kazooie, for example, you weren't seeing the polygons. You weren't seeing the, lack of environmental aspects. You were just seeing this lush, vibrant world. And so that is always my fear with this, is you are going to strip the heart out of this by remastering it, which just means remaking it for the modern age. But this looks like Super Mario RPG. And when they first did this reveal, I first, of course, just thought this was Super Mario RPG coming to NSO, which is still really, really cool. And then they did that cut to the new look, and I was like, wait, what? They is there a filter over this? Like, what are they doing? Like, it took me a second to actually realize Square has remade this game. And it took me a second, because this looks so faithful to the original's art direction that I can't believe they're doing this. It has that delectably chonky look that Super Mario RPG has.
When Mario came out of the door, and he wasn't at all in line with his he wasn't quote unquote on model with what he's quote unquote supposed to look like.
Right, which I hate. Okay, so soapbox time, Josh, but part of the reason I kind of fell out was the Mario franchise circa Super Mario 64, but definitely with the GameCube era, is the standardization of the cast. And there was just something less interesting when they didn't allow variances in there, when they didn't allow an evolution to occur. And to see Mario and friends and enemies look like this again, still modern, but harkening back to that Super Mario RPG style, it makes me want to pore over all the footage. It makes me want to pore over the screenshots and study it and look at it, because that was kind of the exciting thing back in the day, is what will Mario look like now? Or, even with the evolution of the Donkey Kong Country series, seeing the way the renders would progress, boop, 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 boop. Oh, wow. Look at the way Diddy looks now compared to the way he looked 5 years ago. So, yeah, this is bewildering to me that Nintendo is cool with this, and it doesn't just look like every other Mario product since 2003.
Yeah, and it looks like a pre-rendered ACM game that's not being pre-rendered. That's the best way I can put it. If the Donkey Kong Country Super Nintendo trilogy were to ever get a remake, this is exactly how I would want it to be done. And
that's what I was going through my head. Literally, while I was still watching this trailer, I was like, I've always kind of turned up my nose a little bit at the idea of taking Rare's games, their Donkey Kong Country trilogy, or even, outside of even the realms of what would be likely the Donkey Kong Land trilogy, and redoing them yet again, because it'd be like you would be losing some of that quintessential charm of that era. That is very much of that era, 94 to roughly 97, just of its time. And Donkey Kong Country, well, I feel it is in many ways timeless. It is still very much of the mid-90s, right? That is part of its identity. And I think it's lovely, but I was always just picturing it just redone like Retro's Donkey Kong. Nothing against Retro's stylings for Donkey Kong Country, but I wouldn't want that applied to Donkey Kong Country 2, for example. Like, that just wouldn't work. You would be, it's kind of like the way the GBA games just stripped out so much of the atmosphere, partly because of necessity, but also just because, you know, once you start fiddling with things, you can't help yourself. And then it just becomes like the Star Wars special editions where you have, you know, a bunch of CGI creatures stomping around Mos Eisley. And it's just, what am I looking at? But if it was done like
bosses, this... The new bosses in DKC 2 and 3 on GBA look like they came from a completely different game.
Yeah. And, you know, it's fine because it's a remake. It's for the GBA. But whenever you have something of this magnitude, like here is a console remake, you know that this is going to be held up as sort of the gold standard, at least for a generation, like the take for that series. And I don't want something as beloved as Donkey Kong Country 2 getting trampled on, right? I'm very protective of that trilogy. And so seeing this, though, I'd be like, you know, I'd be okay with it if it looked like this. This looks like an ACM game through the prism of 2023. And I don't know how that's possible, but they've retained the art style. Like, it looks like Super Mario RPG. I have no qualms with this. This is spectacular.
Yeah, the aesthetic is authentic, but weirdly not. And I mean, I'm extremely nostalgic for this game. Maybe I'm the wrong person to be saying this, but it doesn't seem dated anymore.
No, it doesn't. And you know, this has been sort of the elusive white whale of the RPG Mario games, right? I know it's come back around, but it's still harder to obtain than any Paper Mario or Mario and Luigi game. So to see it in this fresh context, oh my God, like it excites me. It really does. This is something I might have to actually get on the Switch because I am now that I'm more comfortable with RPGs, now that I'm a grown ass man, I'm like, yeah, you know, it would be fun to actually circle back to this game, that alienated me as a child who didn't know any better, but I still appreciate it on this visceral level and just replay it in this lovely new sheen.
Yeah. And for me, it's just like I said earlier, I missed out on the Super Show. I missed out on on the other Deke cartoons. I, for better and worse, missed out on the movie, and I missed out on the whole peak 80s boom of Mario Mania. So, like, in terms of the characters and the world, this, more than anything else, qualifies as quote-unquote my Mario, and I never, ever thought I'd see it again.
Yeah. Like I said, this was the last time I was really invested in following Mario's world and seeing where it progressed until I realized Mario's world doesn't really progress. Like they will add new characters, but they won't have the weight or magnitude of a Gino or a Mallow, you know? So, yeah, like I'm just pleased with this reveal, and it gives us lots to laugh about with Chained Kong. So thank you, Square. Thank you, Nintendo. I don't know where this Kongversation would be without this game, but
so I guess for Chained Kong, I would say he's probably, it's like some of them are drones, but I will say there's one near the end of the game that, and I'm not going to spoil it because I see some people in the chat who are saying that they've never played it before.
Oh,
there's one Chained Kong near the end of the game that I think might qualify as not being a drone. And that being the case, I'd say he's probably related to the Kongs in some way.
I mean, I think they're supposed to be Kongs, but it's the quintessential Pedo Kong conundrum of DK Vine, right? Like, where does a Kong become DKU? Like, if a Kong has not appeared in a prior Donkey Kong game. So, it was a great philosophical question of classic vintage era DK Vine. And maybe it'll come back up again, you know, who knows? But,
For the record, I'm totally fine considering Super Mario RPG not part of the DKU.
Yeah, I think...
I don't think it is.
I think, especially when you factor in it would be the, fourth DKU game? I think it's a bit early to bring all that nonsense in. Yes, Mario Kart 64 eased us into it a lot easier than just, here's this completely random Kong, and here's a story about a sword crashing through Star Road. Like, what? What does that have to do with Donkey Kong? I'm scared. So they revealed this, and everybody in their little individual Discord chats or wherever was just typing frantically, like, oh my god. And of course, I was on social media making my Chain Kong jokes. Got to get that out there. You're welcome. I do it all for you, DK community. But I was in the inner circle, and everybody was kind of happy. And then they kind of queued us up, like, oh, but that's not all. Like, oh, that was a Mario announcement, wasn't it? But wait a second, maybe we have something else in the works.
Yeah, I think they said specifically something to the effect of Mario's getting a new game, ...
Yeah.
But he's not the only one.
But he's not the only one. Of course, with the recency bias of the Super Mario Brothers movie and the prominence of a certain Kong, Donkey, and a certain Kong, Cranky in that, of course you're thinking, are they teeing us up? Is this going to be it? Is this the announcement? Is this what we've been waiting for?
If anywhere, this is where I thought it was going to happen.
Well, I was thinking, like, if this Direct doesn't end with Pikmin, or some sort of, like, Tears of the Kingdom DLC, it's going to end with Donkey Kong. Like, if Donkey Kong is going to get revealed in this, it's going to be the show-stopping, closing announcement. Like, it won't just be mid-direct like Tropical Freeze was, or Returns was. I know that wasn't a direct, but, stick with me.
Sure.
Like, I feel like at this point, if Donkey Kong is being developed internally, as we've been led to believe, then they would go balls to the wall with Donkey Kong as the big announcement. But but still, you're thinking, are they going to do it here? Is this going to be it? And then Peach shows up, and you're like, oh, it's another Princess Peach game. Remember that DS game? It was a DS game, right?
Yes, it was a DS game.
She had the umbrella, the magic umbrella.
Super Princess Peach.
Right. And I was like, oh, it's we had a Super Mario RPG revival, so here's our Super Princess Peach revival. And it's not that. Did they actually say what this game was titled?
Honestly, I was still so overwhelmed by what I had just seen with the Mario RPG reveal.
Yeah.
I didn't really pick up a lot of what was going on with this one, but I don't think they actually revealed much of anything at all.
Yeah, because
we just saw what about 15 seconds of footage?
They don't even have a trailer up on their YouTube channel. Last I checked, like they will separate the reveals from the Direct. And the Direct, by the way, if you try to pull up the Nintendo Direct right now, at least on Nintendo of America's YouTube channel, the audio is desynced from the video. So good luck. But they usually take the relevant reveals and make their own YouTube videos with them, their own trailers. And they last I checked, before we started this live stream conversation, they had not done this with the Peach game. So it suggests to me that maybe, this is just, they wanted to show it off because they want to ride that inertia, that wave from the Super Mario Brothers movie. It's like, we also have a Peach game in the works. Here's Peach. Josh, I have to say, like, obviously, like, a Princess Peach game isn't going to speak to me, on my best of days, but I wasn't a fan of the look for this game. It's got that Super Mario Brothers 3, life is but a play, like the world is a stage kind of look, where everything looks artificial. And
yeah, it opened with the curtain rising,
yeah.
which I took as a very overt Mario 3 reference.
And you look at the footage, and the sky is just curtains. Everything is a stage prop. Never a fan of this art direction because it takes me out of the game. Like, my biggest complaint, my biggest criticism towards Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts is not the fact that it has vehicular styled gameplay, like you construct vehicles. It's that every world is an artifice. Every world takes place in this fake creation with the Banjo-Kazooie characters play acting. And I'm like, the strength of Rare, the strength of the DKU has always been natural environments. And so, like, that's my one complaint about Nuts and Bolts still to this day. Mm-hmm. And it's why, like, I have been psychoanalyzed by friends of the show. And they have told me, Hyle, I think the reason you don't like Super Mario Bros. 3, like some sort of freakish outcast that you are, because Super Mario Bros. 3 is universally held up as one of the best 2D platformers of all time. And you being a 2D platforming fan hate it? Why is that? And it's because the game is presented as a stage play, and my brain is rejecting it. And so I look at this Peach game and I'm like, don't like that.
Yeah, I don't think I see. This is where, like we've talked about before, that one reason that we, I think, appreciate each other's perspective so much is because we each bring something to the table that the other doesn't. I tend to be very gameplay focused. Honestly, I never even noticed that Mario 3 did any of that until I got on the internet and they were pointing it out. I was just, I didn't even think about it. Like I knew the curtain was rising at the start on the title screen, but the whole world being artificial was not even on my radar.
Yeah. And my two favorite Super Mario Brothers games are Super Mario Brothers 2 and Super Mario World. So, like, two games that really, I think, go in on exotic locales. And, like, we got Subcon, which I know is just a dream realm, but it's still a realm. And it's got just that really great, like, Middle Eastern, like, Aladdin kind of vibe to it. And then you've got Super Mario World, which is Dinosaur Land, and it was in the early 90s, and who doesn't love a Dinosaur Land in the early 90s? So,
yeah, Mario World in particular does have an impressive, like, a sense of cohesion.
Yeah.
That's impressive now, let alone for 1991.
Right. So those are my favorite Mario games, and what I don't like is when things feel like a hoax, like they're tricking you. And
when the polygonal castle disappears at the back.
Yeah, that's when I say this game is nothing but a glorified tech demo. I take that back now. I respect Super Mario 64, even though it's not as good as Banjo-Kazooie. I respect it, but yeah, like everybody's telling me you would love Paper Mario because of the writing and the characters, and I'm sure I would really appreciate that. But could I get past the quasi-origami look of it?
See, back in the day, I'd assumed that, you're just dunking on the castle because, it's a Donkey Kong fan site dunking on Mario. That's funny. Now I understand more that actually bothered you.
Because the whole game, like the biggest, like the stop and swap, if you will, of Super Mario 64 is what is on the top of the castle. It just felt like that is what I'm working towards. Even if I don't know I can get up there, I know I can get up there. What wonders does the top of the castle behold for my young, impressionable eyes? And it turns out it was a lot of bullshit, and they didn't even finish it. And I'm angry about it.
The journey, not the destination, Hyle.
Yeah, and the journey kind of peters out too. Like the early worlds of Super Mario 64, great. And then you're in the clock, and then you're in that damn Skyland. I hate it.
I like every level except for Rainbow Ride, I think.
Meanwhile,
Rainbow Ride, the thing about Rainbow Ride is why are we talking about Mario 64?
Meanwhile, Josh, Banjo-Kazooie finishes on Click Clock Wood, one of the most brilliant concepts ever conceived in 3D platforming. So I don't know. Even Donkey Kong 64 finishes strong with Hideout Helm. So
I still have never gotten anywhere near the end of Donkey Kong 64, but it sounds good. It sounds like it's probably going to be my favorite part of the game if I can ever make it there.
It's stressful, but it's a good stressful. It's an earned stressful.
Yeah, that's what I like.
So Yeah, I'm not that into this Peach game, but good for the Peach fans. I'm glad Peach is getting some shine. She deserves it, especially after the movie. And then there's some sort of Luigi's Mansion. Is it a remake or what?
Again, still kind of blown. My mind was still a bit blown, but I believe it's Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, which originally it was the second Luigi's Mansion game, came out for the 3DS, I think about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It's coming to the Switch.
So it's funny because I remember all the jokes DK Vine was making about that game around that time, just because it sounds like a Pink Floyd album, but also because, we were thinking like, oh, they would be good developers for Donkey Kong. Should that ever, should Retro need a secondary studio to help crank out the Donkey Kong games? Back when we thought, the future of Donkey Kong was just Retro does the big console games, and then there'd be the handheld games done by maybe somebody else, like eventually Monster Games. But, remember handhelds? Remember when there's a difference between handheld Nintendo and console Nintendo?
There are some things I miss about it, yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, yeah, wow, it's been a long time for that. We're already getting a remake for that. All right, well, exciting news if you're a Mario fan or a Luigi fan or a Peach fan. I mean, I don't know how many people out there are just Peach fans. Like, I don't like Mario. I'm Peach Universe. But if that's you, what a day for you.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah, I'm like, I can be happy like from a distance. I can be vicariously happy for somebody, even if I don't feel that happiness in my own heart. Because I can imagine what that would be like.
I am a bigger Daisy fan than a Peach fan, so I wonder if she's going to be in the Peach game too.
Well, it's a big game. It's a big day for Daisy fans too. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
So before we get there, though, I think like in my head, here's what I was thinking about today, Josh. Going into today, while I was sitting in that dentist chair, rocking the John Cougar Mellencamp and fretting about this stuff, I was thinking, I very much doubt we're getting the Donkey Kong announcement, because there's the Donkey Kong announcement, and then there are a Donkey Kong announcement, or some Donkey Kong announcements, plural. And I would be fine with some announcements, something to sink my teeth into. And of course, the thing I kept circling back to, well, it's twofold. It's a twofer. One, Diddy Kong in the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Pass, because we got Birdo way back early in this year, and there were 5 slots left. And so we were thinking, well, Birdo was the big exclusion from Mario Kart 8 alongside Diddy, like the big obvious, what the hell are you doing kind of just overlooking of character, right? And so when they announced like 6, I mean that's, count out the question mark, 6 characters. When they announced that at the beginning of the year, 6 characters were coming to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, then you're thinking, well, Birdo is the first one, and then there's 5 more. Surely Diddy's going to be in there. So I thought there's a good chance, 50-50 shot, that Diddy will be announced today in the Nintendo Direct, and we could feast off that mound of flesh for months, Josh. Like no, that's a bad analogy. I'm a vegan. I am a camel, and I can store that water for months, Josh.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
So that's what I was really thinking about. It's like, but Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Pass, that announcement probably won't come towards later in Direct. So I have time. If I don't make it back at the start of the Direct, I have time. There's also the part of my brain that was thinking NSO announcements, NSO Plus expansion pack. There is very much the possibility. We got Banjo-Kazooie. We got GoldenEye. Diddy Kong Racing is the biggest thing that we could get for our fandom that's not a new game, right? And yeah. I also want Banjo-Tooie.
Absolutely.
I want Donkey Kong 64, but Diddy Kong Racing would mean the most. It's our Super Mario RPG, that game that has such a vast impact on your fandom, on your series, but is so mired in legalities that it can never be referenced. That is the thing that I want back more than anything. So I was also thinking, there is a possibility we would get Diddy Kong Racing announced today. So I was holding on to that hope. Like, I'm not expecting the Donkey Kong announcement, and that's fine. I've made my peace with that. But I'm kind of like a little part of me is giddy about Diddy in all forms. So when the when the booster course pass stuff was queued up, I got my finger hovering over print screen. You better believe it. Like, my finger was ready to take some screen grabs from the Direct so I could announce to the world who weren't paying attention, Diddy Kong is in something. So how do you think that turned out for me, Josh?
This was the point. You asked me earlier, when you thought of me, did you imagine me, I don't know, weeping into a small metallic tin, rocking back and forth in the shower? This was the point where I was like, oh, I feel so bad for Hyle. Yeah, I was disappointed too. I too was like, oh man. But for you, but I was, my disappointment was nothing compared to how much I imagined you were disappointed.
Yeah, for as calm and peaceful and enlightened as I feel today, as much as I could stroll into any mountain glen right now and feed the forest animals from my hand, I am so at one with the universe. This is the only time that the bitter old Hyle from Vintage DK Vine really reared his head and was like, be angry about this. This is this is an injustice. And it's not even necessarily known that it'll be an injustice yet, because we still have 2 more character slots. There's still a possibility. But of course, it would come down to the wire for us if it does come to pass that the booster course pass will gift us Diddy. Of course, it's going to be that high pressure situation where we have to wait until the last possible announcement to know for sure. And that sucks. I hate that. Like, I was so relieved when Banjo and Kazooie were revealed, while there was still more Fighter Pass left in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, because it was just like, okay, pressure's off. We can just enjoy things now. The world is at peace. And I don't like when it comes down to the wire like this. I really don't. I remember Super Smash Bros. For Nintendo 3DS and Wii U. I remember that wasn't a good time for me and for our fandom. And I don't like that PD Piranha, Wiggler, and Kamek were the reveals today, and we got 0 Kongs. I don't like that. I'm not a fan. Don't really appreciate Nintendo's vibe.
It was quite deflating, yeah.
And look, like, if I can remove myself from the situation, if I can remove my stakes in the matter, then I can say Kamek is cool, because Kamek, of course, was supposed to be in Mario Kart 64. Supposed to be. Back when it was like Super Mario Kart R or whatever lame-ass name it originally had. But then Miyamoto decided, hey, you know what? We should put Rare's Donkey Kong, Super Donkey Kong, in Mario Kart 64 instead, because that will move the cartridges. That will really get people's wallets opening up. And so the
Kamek fans were betrayed. They were stabbed in the back, and they've been waiting for revenge for 26 years, Hyle. And finally, on this day, they've gotten it.
Now they have Diddy Kong at the gallows, at the guillotine. So, just to be clear, Kamek has been in a Mario Kart game. It's not a Mario Kart game that I know many of our listeners are into, but Kamek is in Mario Kart Tour, has been in Mario Kart Tour for some time, and they even announced in the Direct Kamek from Mario Kart Tour. So it does open up the possibility that Tour characters are on the menu for the last 2 characters in the Booster Course Pass, which means Dixie Kong is an outside possibility for the last 2 characters. But you would think, if they were adding Dixie Kong, they would also be adding Funky Kong, who has the slightly larger Mario Kart pedigree of being in Mario Kart Wii. And, so, that does make you think, well, there's 2 slots left. So are they going to be thematically linked? Is it going to be Diddy Kong and Funky Kong, or Diddy Kong and Dixie Kong?
Now, a joke that I made when the Booster Course Pass was first revealed, which feels slightly less like a joke now, is that I would like for one of the characters for the Booster Course Pass to be Booster from off of Super Mario RPG.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it's within the realm of conversation now, but at the very least.
It's slightly more possible, but I'm not expecting it.
So, yeah, I have to admit, I'm feeling the flop sweat over this one. Like, I can be completely at peace with everything else in this Direct, and I can be worried about this. Because I said at the beginning of the year, I'm feeling great about Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, because of course, they're not going to be opening up new returning characters from past Mario Karts and not bring Diddy into this. Like, Diddy and Birdo were the big, what are you doing, oopsie doodles of Mario Kart 8's original release. And then Mario Kart 8 Deluxe
they had to be
out.
Sacrificed so we could get all of the Koopa Kids in there.
Yeah, that pissed me off. When they did that Koopa Kid reveal, I was like, or Koopa Lean reveal, whatever they're called these days.
They're the Koopa Kids. I'm not I'm not going for that.
But I was like, are you shitting me? Because I remember when I was very much an advocate for the Koopa Kids, I was like, how dare they get replaced by Bowser Jr.? And now I'm just like, oh, and now you're going to waste 7 roster slots on these turtle children. Don't like it. Not a fan. But, I made my peace with it. And then time passed. Time heals all wounds eventually. And we get to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. And it was, King Boo and who else was in the base game? I don't know.
I think they added the Inklings at that point.
Yeah. And it was just like,
Isabelle and I think the Villager from off of Animal Crossing.
Well, it was like, fuck me. And then they finally, years after the fact, open up the Booster Course Pass, and you're like, well, of course, they won't overlook Diddy now, especially since Birdo is the first character, and they have 5 more characters left.
And that really is the thing. It seems like such a given that at least one of either Diddy or Funky would be a character that would come back here.
And I want Diddy. If I...
Oh, me too.
If I had to choose between my babies, I would choose Diddy anytime. But if it was just Funky, I would be a little bit perplexed. But I would also be like, well, cool. Because I love Funky. So...
Oh, yeah. The people who love Mario Kart Wii in particular tend to have a great deal of reverence for the way that Funky Kong was portrayed in that game.
Yeah. So... like I said, I have to admit, I'm a little bit worried about where this is going. There are still 2 more roster slots left, and there's still the possibility of a new Donkey Kong track, because long ago there was the data mined file name from Mario Kart Tour that showed a new Donkey Kong track was on the way, and all of these Booster Course tracks are taken from Tour. Even the vintage classic returning ones, they take the Tour version and give them a little bit of a shine, so. But we're coming down to the wire. And like I said, I have enough residual trauma from Super Smash Bros. 4 that I'm just thinking, I know these things don't usually come our way. They usually don't break for us. When it comes down to the wire, when you have one last big reveal, it usually doesn't mean anything good for DKU fans. So, yeah, I am actually worried for once. And I will be astounded. I will be staggered. I will be stupefied if we have 6 new characters in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and nary a Kong to be seen.
I guess, I mean, and you sort of alluded to this earlier, but is it possible that what Nintendo wants to do is, I mean, somebody in the chat has, I don't know if this how much of a joke this is, but Dastro4 says saving it for the DK Direct. And to sort of extrapolate on that, is it possible that Nintendo wants to, for example, reveal Diddy Kong Racing is coming to Nintendo Switch Online, and pair that with and Diddy Kong Racing will be in the Booster Course pack, which is free for NSO subscribers?
Well, anything's possible, Josh. It's possible I could win the lottery tomorrow, and I don't even play the lottery. But, you know, I don't want to... What is it people say nowadays when you're optimistic? When they try to put you down for being optimistic, it's a copium or hopium. You're taking the hopium. How
don't yuck my yum, Hyle.
Yeah, like be a realist. The world sucks, and you're gonna die. So I don't want to go overboard with the optimism, but I think that really opens us up to the last game I really want to discuss and what it bodes for Donkey Kong's future. Okay? So there were somewhat credible leaks starting a couple days before the Direct. First, that there would be a Direct, and two, what game, at least one game that would be shown off would be. And it was clearly second or third hand information, like somebody who's not in the know, but knows somebody who might be in the know, or knows somebody who knows somebody who's in the know. And so it was kind of like a game of pass the telephone where things started to get distorted a little bit, and you weren't getting a clear picture of what you were hearing. And of course, there's also the possibility that this is all just bunk, right? So
hang on, I didn't hear any rumors about Penny's big breakaway. What are you talking about?
Yeah, yo-yo. She has a yo-yo, Josh. Do you know how cool yo-yos are? I know this
is... no. Listen, I'm bringing this up for not purely altruistic reasons. As soon as I saw it, I was like, ooh, this looks like my bullshit. And then they said, from the creators of Sonic Mania. This is what Christian Whitehead Studio has been working on. So as soon as I heard that, I was like, now I know this is my bullshit.
It just took me back to childhood. And this is a topic that DK Vine brings up every so often. But the bullshit yo-yo assembly at your school. And I don't know if you ever partaked in this. The Simpsons actually did a gag about this back in the day. It was very accurate. So when you're in elementary school, somehow Big Yo-Yo bribes your school to have an assembly where they show off yo-yo trickmeisters. I don't know what they're called. And they do yo-yo tricks. And then, you know, they like sell Dunkin' branded yo-yos to the kids afterwards. How is this legal in the public school system? I'll never know. But it seems to be a unifying thing for a lot of people my age or younger, perhaps. But
I remember yo-yos and yo-yo tricks being very, like, it was a very big deal when I was in elementary school. Like, everybody had one. But I do not remember ever going to a yo-yo assembly. That sounds fascinating.
Yeah, so the yo-yo assembly, nobody gave a shit about yo-yos before the yo-yo assembly. But I'm just laughing at the absurdity of what's spilling out of my mouth. The fact that I'm still bitter about it today. So yo-yos were seen as rightfully this artifact of a bygone era. Like, yo-yos, it's a fucking piece of plastic or wood on a string. Who gives a shit? We live in a fantastical age of string theory and God particles.
But then they put translucent plastic on it, and in the 90s, that was all it took.
Right. Maybe they have, like, yo-yos that, like, light up when you do the tricks.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah. So all of a sudden, every like impressionable youth around me is all about yo-yos. And I remember having these discussions with my friends at the time, and they were like, well, we don't really care about video games anymore because we got to work on how to walk the dog.
What?
Right? Yeah. Like, people eschewed video games for like a few weeks. For a few weeks. Because let's be honest. Yo-yos would not captivate the youth of not just the 90s, but any era once people really started contemplating the yo-yo lifestyle.
Yo-yo lifestyle.
Yeah, so for a few terrible weeks in elementary school, I had zero frame of reference with my friends because they were all about mastering the yo-yo tricks that were provided to them by the fine people at the Duncan conglomerate. So, and I was just sitting there like, surely this will pass. And it did pass. And people eventually realized, yeah, maybe video games have more to offer as far as a diversity of entertainment than a piece of plastic on a string. But anyway, anytime I see yo-yos, I just get irrationally bitter. The same way I did with Monkey Island the other week, where I'm just like, this takes me back to a time when I felt really alienated. When I felt like the only person in an otherwise solid rock clique, right? So anyway, yeah.
That reminds me, the story of how your friends briefly seemed to abandon video games for yo-yos reminds me of this strange memory I have of watching Nick News with Linda Ellerby, where they introduced a segment with this kid saying, "I used to think video games were cool. Then I discovered pinball." And I was like, you narc. No, you didn't.
See, here's the thing. I liked pinball as a kid, but I also really liked video game pinball. So I didn't view them as basically at odds with each other, like yo-yos and video games were. But yeah, there was this weird tendency in the 90s, at least, to let kids know that video games are just a passing fad, and the real, like, the real foundation of a stable childhood was, I don't know, moon boots or pogo sticks or something. Like, what your boomer parents grew up with. And just eventually...
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. It's because, you know, people who were parents in the 90s had not possibly had been able to grow up playing video games. So to them, it was just like, oh, this won't last.
Right. Just the same way today, when people turn up their nose at everybody's chatbot sex partners. It's just like, you know what?
Yeah, that's very similar. Very similar.
So, Josh, sorry for the tangent there. I don't know what came over me. You mentioned yo-yos and I saw red. I want to talk about the rumor mongering. So, yeah, this game, like I said, that was basically overblown to be something that it wasn't. It still looks cool. I'm not saying, like, I think the game isn't worth getting all in a titter about, but this game was described in the leaks that were leaking from leaks, as a game called Super Mario Wild Wonders. This is how I read it. This is how a lot of people read it. A game where you could ride wild animals as steeds and directly inspired by Donkey Kong Country.
Wow. Okay, you saw some leaks that I didn't see then.
Okay.
Because what I saw, the only thing I saw, which, because Nintendo Direct leaks are such, you know, it's a dime a dozen thing, I did not think that this held any water whatsoever, but all I saw was that a new 2D Mario game was coming, and a remake of a Super Nintendo game was coming. Mm-hmm. And of course, both of those turned out to be true.
Yeah. We only get the really, like, bedrock true ones, like, a couple days beforehand, and I don't know if it's just because people who put together the Direct then tell their friends, who maybe tell their friends, and, you know, stuff does trickle out of it, because Nintendo's pretty locked down normally, and where you do get leaks is the passing of information from east to west or vice versa. That's when you really have, like, things filtering through. But, and I can speak from experience there, but yeah, so the way this...
Yeah, and it also tends to be a game of telephone. Like, some of the leaks I've heard tend to be things where it's like, well, somebody told me this, and a source told me this, and a source told me this, and so by the time it gets to you, you know, I always take anything I hear with a grain of salt.
Yeah, so like I want to say 24 hours before the Direct, right after they announced the Direct. I was getting messages in my DMs about this. I was getting a lot of hand-wringing and very understandable hand-wringing the way this was described, because the way it was described was Nintendo is picking the carcass of Donkey Kong Country for the benefit of Mario, taking what makes Donkey Kong Country so special, boop, giving it to Mario because, well, Mario will just sell better. And then that opens up.
Peach now has a ponytail and can do a helicopter twirl with it. Wow.
Right. There's now like angry bees in Mario. There's now crocodile people, and Mario's father beats him with a cane.
Wow.
Yeah. So, you don't know how much to really buy into it. And of course, like, I haven't heard from any of my sources about this, but they wouldn't necessarily reach out to me if there was a Mario game anyway, because I'm DK Vine. So, I'm like, this might be true. And if it is true, if this is verbatim truth, we're going to be in trouble come tomorrow. As a fan community, I am going to have to rally everyone, because people are going to view this as Donkey Kong is dead. Nintendo has no plans for it, and they are taking the best bits from Donkey Kong and giving it to Mario. All hope is lost. Repent now for your sins. So
I'm actually glad that I didn't hear the details on that thing, because I would have been similar,
And look, my inbox is always open, so I hear this stuff. I can't really separate myself from it unless I just become a mountain man. I go just full wild mode, and I just like walk away from the keyboard, and I can't, because my duties and responsibilities to DK Vine. So when they said we have one more thing, I was like, well, they already showed 3 Mario games and a WarioWare game. So are they really going to end with yet another Mario game? So part of me was wondering if this was just bullshit, if this was just made up. And it was like, this could end with Donkey Kong. You never know. And you always know, right? The second you see a millisecond of footage. Yeah, I said it. The moment you see the briefest snapshot, you smell the briefest whiff, you hear but a slight sliver of audio, you know whether it's Donkey Kong or not. It's never in question. Like, I think the only time I was ever like on my heels, unsure, was when it was some Pokemon reveal back in the day, and they started in a jungle, and so you're like, and then it was just this kid walking through the jungle. It's like, oh, some kid, it's Pokemon. But
I wonder which one that was. Maybe Pokemon Snap.
No, it wasn't Pokemon Snap. This was much more recent than Pokemon Snap. Like,
well, new Pokemon Snap.
Oh, maybe it was.
That was recent.
I don't remember.
In any case,
it all blurs together. There's some Detective Pikachu game today, and I was like, oh, is that still a thing? Was that ever a thing? I know there was a movie. I don't remember. I don't care. But yeah, they had this like flower that was like, "Hi, how you doing? Come here often."
Yeah, that was our first impression. Yeah,
yeah. And so I was like, "Oh, it's Mario." The leak was real. But part of me was like, "But wait a second, this doesn't look like Donkey Kong Country. Let me keep watching," because there was that worry, there was that fear that what if the new Mario game was like, yeah, Super Mario Safari, essentially. And then it's just like, what does that mean for Donkey Kong? Like, what are you doing here, Nintendo? So they showed Mario running around, and it looked like a new Super Mario Brothers game, but with some effort.
Gee, there in the new Super Mario Brothers games.
Yeah, that was mean. Let me
No. It's how incredibly casual it was, and it's okay. That is a very common refrain about the new Super Mario Brothers games. Even more so nowadays than it was back when they were originally coming out.
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me. It's just, the casualness of, like, with effort.
Right. This actually felt like maybe an evolution of the format in a way that actually matters. In a way that isn't just we're going to add a silly helicopter hat and and that's being maybe too dismissive. I realize. I understand, but yeah, it looks like what if Super Mario tripped balls essentially, and I'm like, okay, you had me at tripping balls, so. Then they started to show the other playable characters. Like Luigi popped up, and I was like, okay, well, Luigi, it makes sense. It's a Super Mario game, plausibly a Super Mario Brothers game. I'm just gonna see where this goes. And then I think Peach was there, maybe a Toad, and then Daisy showed up, and I was like, oh no, are they gonna end? Are they gonna end this on the reveal that we have a playable Donkey Kong in a Super Mario game?
I don't know what that would do to your psyche, Hyle.
I think it would fracture it in a way that you wouldn't just be talking to Hyle right now, you'd be talking to myriad of personalities. I was bracing for it because when you hear these leaks, when you hear these rumors that Mario is going to be cribbing from Donkey Kong, not only are you thinking, are they just going to be like borrowing heavily from DKC, but you're thinking, is this going to be a Mario X Donkey Kong game? Because when the movie came out, or even before the movie came out, when the trailer showed Mario and Donkey Kong sort of charging the Mushroom Kingdom together, all of a sudden, like that was now what felt like a widespread opinion. Oh, you know what we would really like? We don't want a Donkey Kong game. We want a game where Donkey Kong and Mario team up. That's what we want. Because recency bias, people see something, ooh, shiny, and that's what they chase after. And as somebody who's very much has always advocated for keeping Mario and Donkey Kong separate for the most part, like the franchises at arm's length, the very last thing we need right now is to have a Mario X Donkey Kong game, because then people will just think there is no Donkey Kong brand, there is no Donkey Kong series, it's all Mario. And
in particular, not just Donkey Kong appearing in like a Mario spin-off, but to appear in a mainline Mario platformer.
Yeah.
That otherwise has nothing or little to nothing to do with Donkey Kong.
Right. Like, it was one thing with the Mario versus Donkey Kong series in the buyout era, into the returns era, because while, yeah, they were just Mario games with Donkey Kong in them, there was little to no Donkey Kong elements, rare Donkey Kong elements in there. There was, of course, allusions to the arcade era, but there was really nothing in there to really make it Mario versus Donkey Kong, because then you're picturing just an epic clash of franchises, right? It was just Donkey Kong and Mario games. But they were always smaller side games. There was always Donkey Kong games at the same time. There was Jungle Beat, there were the Congo games. There was, of course, the Payon games, and then Returns, and then Tropical Freeze. So it never really made as large of an impact as we would have feared. But if Donkey Kong was playable right alongside Luigi and Peach and Daisy in a mainline Mario platformer, then yeah, I think the identity of the Donkey Kong series would be stripped bare. And that was my biggest fear when they started doing these, like, this montage of reveals. I was like, it's coming, isn't it? Like, I had a really sick feeling in the pit of my stomach. Even though I liked what I was seeing in the context of a Super Mario Brothers game, as a Donkey Kong fan, it would be the last thing I would want to see Donkey Kong in this. Because then people would, of course, draw the conclusion that Donkey Kong is dead as a standalone franchise. Donkey Kong is nothing more than a Mario character, and the house of cards that we reside in would collapse. So imagine my relief.
And yeah, for real.
I don't. You don't have to worry about this as a Sonic fan, Josh. This fear, this somewhat reoccurring threat that springs up maybe every 5 years or so, that another series is going to come along and gobble up Sonic.
It's funny you say that, because when I said I can't imagine what that would do to your psyche, I was relating to you via the imagination of some things that they could do with Sonic that would similarly shatter my psyche.
Explain it to me.
So don't worry, it is possible.
No, explain it to me. I would like to know what troubles the Sonic the Hedgehog fan, because from my perspective, Sonic fans are always eating well. Like you always have a bounty in front of you.
I mean, it's stuff we've sort of talked about in conversations past. Basically, the Sonic community, Sonic has gone in so many different directions and tried so many things and been such a consistently inconsistent series that there are all these like warring factions. Warring factions makes it sound like it's like it's a bigger deal than it really is, but it can feel that way. There's never a worry that there aren't going to be more Sonic games, but there is a constant worry that there aren't going to be any more Sonic games that you like, if that makes sense.
I guess it just seems like such a remote thing to me that you have to I guess the buyout era is the closest analogy I can come to that, when there was the drama around Jungle Beat and the Donkey Konga games, but we liked Payon, but we liked the rare GBA remakes.
I guess the closest thing you've got that the DK community has, and it's been so long now that it's pretty well been swept under the rug, but it would be like, Donkey Kong 64 did not appeal to us the same way that the DKC Super Nintendo trilogy did, right?
I would say for anybody who was of the right age when the Donkey Kong Country games came out, like if you were of that age when DK64 hit, that is your Donkey Kong game.
Exactly. And that's sort of a version. If you imagine what would have happened if Donkey Kong 64 had continually gotten sequels that moved it in some ways further and further away from the DKC trilogy, and that in turn spawned like basically a fandom within the fandom that liked those games but did not like the original games, and then Rare went back and started being a little bit more like the original games, which made the Super NES fans happy but pissed off the DK64 style fans. And also there were like 17 different cartoons and comic books, and a lot of it depends on where you grew up in the world and what age you were. That's kind of a smattering of how fractured the Sonic fan base can be.
In a live stream, Sonic Tess said, "Oh, Hyle doesn't know."
Yeah. And I envy you in some ways for not knowing.
Like we all have our downsides to our respective fandoms, and we have our benefits. And while I view you and I'm like, oh, the grass must be so green over there. Then I'm sure you're like, what are you talking about? This is the drama we have to deal with. So understandable.
I should say Sonic Superstars being revealed a couple of weeks ago made me feel, even though it hadn't been nearly as long, it made me feel every bit the same way that Mario RPG did, where I'm like, thank God this is happening.
And so the Direct ended, Josh, and
right.
Got nothing to show for it. Like literally nothing to show for it. Chain Kong memes. That's what I have to show for it. And you would think that would shatter me. This would be akin to E3, was it 2011, 2012? One of those E3s betwixt Returns and Tropical Freeze, where it was just a shutout, and you were just like, oh, I guess that momentum we were riding from Returns is not to be followed up on, at least immediately. And
you got the Donkey Kong game in Nintendo Land, Hyle. What are you complaining about?
That was just arcade bullshit, Josh. It was girders. This is DK Vine. So, like, why am I feeling good? Well, I think Super Mario Brothers Wonder, not Super Mario Wild Wonder. Super Mario Brothers Wonder is what the game is called. I think it looks pretty sweet, and I'm glad that they are doing something somewhat daring with 2D Mario. You know, I'm always going to choose Donkey Kong over Mario when it comes to my platforming preferences, day in, day out, no question. But like, my biggest criticism towards 2D Mario since, what is it, like, I mean, if you don't even count the Yoshi's Island games, then it's Super Mario World. Like, the new Super Mario Brothers series, they regressed the franchise, in my opinion. They took things to an earlier state than even Super Mario World. They like shrunk things down in a less interesting, more scaled back, less, like, I know it's weird for me to be clamoring for innovation when it comes to games, since that was my biggest criticism of Nintendo during the GameCube era, but like, I want to see that evolution in play. It's one of my critiques about Returns, is I don't feel like Returns built on DKC3 enough. It's one of the reasons I really like Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair. I feel like it does build on DKC3.
I think similar to Returns, when New Super Mario Brothers first started, it made a certain amount of sense to take things back to basics for a couple of different reasons. One was just that it had been such a long time since the last 2D Mario game. Even counting Yoshi's Island, it had been 11 years, but if you want to go back to Super Mario World, it had been 15 years since the last 2D Mario game. And so taking things all the way back to like sort of a reimagined Super Mario Brothers for that first game made a lot of sense. I think the new series, Folly, was not evolving enough. Mm-hmm. And also having too many games that came out too close together and that were too similar to each other.
Yes. I agree. They milked that cow until the udders were withered.
And because for the first two of the new Super Mario Brothers games, they were very well regarded at one time. I think that the second one that came out for the Wii added co-op, it added the propeller hat, it added the Penguin Mario power up, and co-op especially, and also just the fact that it was a console game, I think gave it enough cash that even though it was quite similar to the first one, people were still okay with it. And then in 2012, in the space of like 3 months, they came out with New Super Mario Bros. 2 on the 3DS and New Super Mario Bros. U on the Wii U. And that second one in particular was like one of the big flagship games for a new Nintendo console. Mm-hmm. And that was the point where people really got sour on the new Super Mario Bros. Series. And despite the fact that we haven't had another one come out in almost 11 years now, people still seem pretty dang sour about it.
Well, and especially when you had the retro Donkey Kong games coming out, like sandwiching that era. At least that era of the latter day new Super Mario Brothers games. And it showed, like, even though my criticism towards Returns not advancing where DKC left off, even that notwithstanding, you know, it still did so much more, and it dared to push the envelope, you know, drive those boundaries forward in a way that it made the new Super Mario Brothers series feel safe and just kind of I don't know, muted, stale, just but I mean, it's been a while since we've had a 2D Mario game. It's been a while since we had a 2D Donkey Kong game, but that's just my opinion. But I think this actually looks intriguing, because you've got the Wonder Seeds that makes Mario trip balls, and it just it looks tits out bonkers, Josh. And so where the wires got crossed in the leaking was that the whole animal steed thing, not actually the case. There's no riding elephants to be seen here. Mario turns into an elephant man. That being said, like a Mario elephant, like an elephant in the overalls with a mustache. And
it works like a power-up. It will almost certainly be called Elephant Mario.
Yeah, and it's not Mario riding around on an elephant laughing his ass off that he stole another thing from Donkey Kong. So, the fact that there was no actual DKC-style elements stripped from DKC and given to Super Mario Brothers, nor was there playable Donkey Kong in this, I felt such a wave of relief when the direct ended. One, because I was like, well, what, like, we dodged a couple bullets there. Like, from what the leaks made, it sounded like we were going to be in trouble today. And also, it just looks like a kind of a fun Super Mario Brothers game, and I'm kind of intrigued. But it made me confident in a couple things, Josh. And I guess that is the crux of this episode. This is why I felt good going into this. This is why I felt okay reaching out to you and saying, hey, Josh, do you want to be on a live conversation in just a couple hours? Because I got some things I want to say, and I feel pretty good right now. And I don't know. I think considering the last not E3 episode you were on was the E3 we just made up.
That's true.
It would be fun to just talk to you about something concrete. So,
and that is nice, because when you asked me, my first thought was that I was here to sort of be a contrast. I needed to be here to like lift the spirits, so to speak, as somebody who was largely really not even largely, who was very satisfied with a lot of stuff that was in the direct.
Yeah, like I'm okay with this direct, even though I got zilch. Because walking out of this direct, I feel more confident that whatever form Donkey Kong is arriving in next, it's probably a far more expansive game, and probably something closer to Donkey Kong Freedom, which you and I discussed the last time you were on the conversation, than a lot of the contemporaneous leakers from around the same time, who honestly probably jumped on the backs of our own reporting, would have led you to believe or would have assumed themselves. Because, we started talking about what we were hearing. Of course, I couldn't get into all of the details at the time about what I knew about Vicarious Visions and the fact that they were working on a 3D Donkey Kong game that then got scuttled, and then Nintendo decided to bring development of Donkey Kong back internally, and that's where it got cut off for me. That's the last I know. But I couldn't really get into those details. But a lot of people, a lot of the leakers at the time who were at least paralleling our own reporting, if not just listening to the conversation and extrapolating from there, were saying it was a 2D Donkey Kong game, right? Mm-hmm. Like, the next Donkey Kong game would be 2D. And part of that, I think what fed into that understanding was Nintendo opened up job listings for a 2D platformer. I can't remember the specifics, but I do remember that. And so people were just drawing their conclusions. Well, Donkey Kong is a 2D franchise. Nintendo would never invest more capital in it than that. Not to say there's anything wrong with 2D games. I love 2D platformers. I will fucking shiv anyone who disrespects them.
Yeah, God, you see a lot of that these days, don't you?
Yeah, it goes in cycles.
It does. It really does. I often see things that I'm like, man, I remember reading like almost word for word that exact thing in like a video game magazine circa 1997.
Right.
Like, oh, we're back here again.
So it's nice to see that Super Mario Brothers Wonder is keeping the vanguard for 2D platforming, while Donkey Kong might be doing something else. And I'm not saying the next Donkey Kong game will be 3D. I'm saying it's more likely, seeing this and putting the pieces together, that the Donkey Kong game that was in development was 3D, And of course, Nintendo won't just be taking what Vicarious Visions had done and just resuming from there. Okay, we'll finish it for ya. That's what we do.
Yeah,
We're Nintendo.
That's not Nintendo style.
That's not Nintendo style, but I'm sure there might be some inspiration there. And they're like, well, that was cool, the way you put banana peels on their feet while they grinded down vines. Maybe we could do something similar to that. And I do think the next Donkey Kong game is going to have a wow factor that even the retro era games did not. And they've had a wow factor, don't get me wrong, but when I say wow factor, I mean akin to Super Mario Odyssey. I mean akin to the original Donkey Kong Country, something that makes you sit up and take notice and say, well, that's a game changer. And I do think that is where Donkey Kong is headed, and I do think that is part of what's taking so long, and I think that's why it's not ready to be shown yet. And, I was walking into this Nintendo Direct. I was afraid, based on that secondhand, third-hand leaking, that Mario was going to be feasting off the corpse of Donkey Kong Roadkill, right? Like, Mario's just going to be gobbling this up, these attributes that Donkey Kong Country is well known for. Or, the worst case scenario, the thing I feared more than anything else, Donkey Kong would be made a supporting character in a Mario platformer, in some sort of hybrid game where maybe he gets sub-billing, or maybe he doesn't get any billing at all because fuck it, Mario is the star here. Neither happened, Josh. And so Donkey Kong's franchise integrity remains as we walk out of this Nintendo Direct, and they're still strategically keeping them at arm's length. Our own Dustin Jackson had a great line in the DK Vine Inner Circle when we were watching this Direct, and I said I would quote him verbatim in this episode, and I'm going to do that right now. He said, I hate when the best thing you can say is that DK wasn't there. But it's kind of true in this very specific case. And I do think we can understand a lot about the direction of Donkey Kong by the fact that Donkey Kong was not there, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I mean, to sort of zoom it out and just pretend like I don't know anything about an upcoming Donkey Kong game.
Sure.
Even taking that out of the picture and out of the equation, Nintendo announced so many things. Nintendo has so many buns in the oven, so to speak. But what they don't have, what they didn't announce, at least not from a first-party publisher, is a big 3D platformer. So, and when you were talking about this in the Inner Circle chat, I didn't have the context that you were worried that the 2D of why you would be worried the 2D Mario game would be feasting on Donkey Kong's corpse.
Yeah.
So, but now that makes it even more understandable as to why. Okay, not only was Donkey Kong not in anything here, but there wasn't anything that you can point to that would in any way replace a potential Donkey Kong game.
Yeah, when I did my big rallying, all right, community, we're going to be okay social media spiel yesterday, I had a specific part in there that I earmarked just in case worst case scenario happened. And I said, even if Mario is wearing Donkey Kong's flayed skin or something to that effect, tomorrow, it's still going to be okay because XYZ, which I'll get into here on this podcast in a second. But that was why I said that, because there was that slight worry, even knowing what we know at DK Vine, even having the confidence that we do, you always have those moments of doubt. When it feels like the entire world is speaking a different language than you can start doubting yourself. And you can be like, oh, I guess I'm the crazy one. I guess Donkey Kong isn't its own series anymore. I guess it's just a little vestigial limb in the Mario circulatory system. Okay. But it wasn't the case. And look, I understand if anybody's listening to this and they're like, Hyle, why are you so happy right now. You've got nothing. Your hands are empty. I'm feeling hurt. I'm feeling dejected. I'm feeling this is E3 2012 all over again. And look, I was feeling that way just a little bit over a week ago. I was feeling that way after the Xbox showcase on the 11th. This despondent feeling of hopelessness where, there's no trace of any legacy Rare franchises. Everwild is MIA, and, even Sea of Thieves, a game I adore, is even being temporarily co-opted by things outside of our purview. And I'm really excited for the Monkey Island fans out there, and I'm sure it'll be a top-notch, high-quality set of tall tales, my own dispassion notwithstanding, but my feelings were my feelings at the time. I was feeling like it's really hard to be a fan of this stuff. It's really hard to be a fan of the DKU, however you break it down, because it feels like we never get the same wins that almost everyone else, sans F-Zero fans, seem to get.
Or F-Zero fans. And I appreciated that because, you were saying that you felt like everyone around you was very excited about the Monkey Island thing. Similarly, it did nothing for me, and knowing that you also felt that way, I felt that kinship. I felt seen, so to speak.
I can't be Mr. Positivity all the time, because at a certain point that just becomes a false face, that becomes a put on. And I've got to be the real me at all times on this podcast. And, with enough time having passed, with it being 10 days since that reveal, I can say, I've calmed down a little bit, or at least that initial knee-jerk reaction that this dredges up some bad memories for me, and it puts me back on my back heels where I'm feeling defensive towards who I am and what my interests are. That's past, and I'm just like, I played Sea of Thieves with Jeff off stream on Monday night, and we had a great time, and I was just like, I remember why I like this game, and there's going to be this event that I'm not going to have any, real devotion to as far as the subject matter, but I'm sure I still have a good time with it, and, it's okay. It's okay. It doesn't always have to be about me. I don't always have to be the belle of the ball here, even at DK Vine. So I can understand how people are feeling, and I totally get if you're a Donkey Kong diehard, or shout out to the Star Fox fans out there right now, because you are also a part of the DK Vine community, and I get that completely. I understand how you're feeling right now, getting 4 Mario games, 5 Mario games, 6 Mario games, content-wise, all together. I understand the crushing weight of that and how demoralizing it can feel, but the story here, if you're a Donkey Kong diehard, and I am a Donkey Kong diehard, Josh. I don't know if you know that about me. It's not part of me that I share often, but I do.
I thought you like Street Fighter. What's this Donkey Kong stuff?
I know did the new Street Fighter game come out?
Yeah, Street Fighter 6.
Yeah, I don't care.
Heard lots of good things about it.
I don't care anymore.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. The story, if you're a Donkey Kong diehard like me, a little bit like you, Josh. You got a little bit of a Donkey Kong fan in you.
Oh, a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. So little like a little Joey in your kangaroo pouch, just riding along.
Well, maybe we'll get Kangaroo Mario, huh?
Didn't we already have that at some point? I can't. Did I imagine that?
I don't remember.
Okay, maybe it's something else. Maybe it was an enemy in Yoshi's Island DS. Maybe, I don't know. Some sort of kangaroo in a Mario game. The story, if you're a Donkey Kong diehard, Josh, is that the conspicuous absence of everything is actually a benefit today. And that's not hopium, that's not copium, that's not me deluding myself. If nothing for Donkey Kong was in the works right now, right hot on the heels after this newfound interest in Donkey Kong with the Super Mario Brothers movie, we would be getting fill-ins. And what are fill-ins? Well, a fill-in is what you get when there's absolutely nothing immediately planned for Donkey Kong. So we would get a port of Returns on the Switch, which I would actually really like. Don't get me wrong, but
same here, yeah.
we would get that. We would get something akin to Donkey Kong Adventure that we got for Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, or we would get playable Donkey Kong in Super Mario Bros. Wonder, just to give Donkey Kong something to do while a new Donkey Kong game is theoretically years away.
Mm-hmm.
And considering that there is no utterance today of a Switch 2 or whatever the successor console to the Switch will actually be, we might still be a ways off towards an announcement there. And we don't know at this point if Donkey Kong will make it out to the current Switch, or if the next Donkey Kong game will be something more akin to a launch title or a near launch title for the next console. But I do think that we are close enough in the timeline to the release of the new Donkey Kong game that Nintendo is feeling confident enough about it that they're not giving Donkey Kong anything this not E3 Direct. Because the last time there was absolutely nothing in the works for Donkey Kong, it's when Retro moved on from Tropical Freeze to their Can You Dig It game, which, of course, Can You Dig It? Turns out it dug its own grave. But at that time, Donkey Kong did not have a developer. There was nothing in the cards for Donkey Kong. And so Nintendo said, okay, we're going to put Donkey Kong in the next Skylanders. That will hold off the crushing weight of a long absence for Donkey Kong. And then when Donkey Kong Freedom fell through, we're going to put Tropical Freeze on the Switch. We're going to have a whole Donkey Kong adventure added as DLC to Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle. That is when you know that there's nothing huge in the works for Donkey Kong, is when we get the fill-ins, and those fill-ins
or
can be
the thing
great.
that is huge, or the thing that it's gonna be huge is still a long ways away.
Yeah, like if there was nothing in the works for Donkey Kong, Nintendo wouldn't just be sitting there, their thumbs up their ass, saying, well, you know, Mario's the brand, who cares about Donkey Kong? We're just gonna shut Donkey Kong out of everything. It's never been the way Nintendo's operated since 1993. That's not, like, they've always had something in the works for Donkey Kong for 30 years now, Josh. And I look at this and I'm like, okay, it's clearly still coming. I felt good after this because I was like, all the telltale signs of we're stalling for time aren't there. And the fact that we got nothing feels like one of those E3s where it's darkest before the dawn, right? Like the E3 2012, miserable E3 from the Nintendo perspective. We were just crestfallen here at DK Vine. It was a year before the Kongversation started, thank God. But
yeah, God.
I remember a lot of drinking that day. And I'm not a day drinker, Josh.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. I'm not a day drinker, Josh. Other people were, but I wasn't. But you know what I mean? Like, you felt compelled to alleviate your despair. And then
I was having a good time. I was totally unironically excited about the Wii U. And I was like, nah, you guys are, it's going to overcome the odds. It's going to be great.
I was theoretically excited about the Wii U. I was like, I could see some cool potentials for a Donkey Kong game if they ever announce one. And then, you know, the very next year we got Tropical Freeze, and it just like I was a weepy little man-child, wasn't I? Like, come the fuck on. I should have known better, but I was still very much buying into that buyout era mentality of Nintendo hates Donkey Kong. Donkey Kong's not going to be in Smash Brothers. Yeah. That's the sound I make when I punch myself in my crotch because I just can't take it anymore. And that's nonsense. That is just the most like, I am going to stand on this ledge and I'm going to shout and I want all the attention right now. Like, I understand when you feel compelled to do that. I do, because it does help sort of bury the pain a little bit when you can make a big show of the pain. But
And I mean, part of it too is just an experience thing.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you've been around.
Yeah.
Right?
I've been around long enough to know exactly how this plays out. And that's why I have the perspective now to walk out of this direct saying, oh, okay, not this time, but good things are coming. And yeah, you can say, Hyle, you're just deluding yourself. Donkey Kong is dead. I saw comments. Oh, Josh. I saw comments from people not necessarily plugged into DK Vine or the Kongversation or even the Geek Critique. Because, your audience, I know a lot of your audience listen to the episodes you're on and they get the wisdom imparted down to them as well. But I know that there are people not plugged into any of our wares that are saying, well, of course there's no Donkey Kong game. Retro is working on Metroid Prime 4.
Right. I've seen a little bit of that too. And it's like that's something that you've talked about here before too, where sometimes it seems like gaming discourse gets tunnel vision, where it's like the only thing that can happen is the last thing that happened.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. The last thing happened, so it will happen again. I don't know anything beyond my very small bubble. And all I can say to that is not true. We already know that's not true because we already know there was a Donkey Kong game in development post-Retro moving on. Nintendo's not waiting around for Retro to finish Metroid so they can make another Donkey Kong game. That's not the case. And the last we heard, Nintendo, after Vicarious Visions fell through, Nintendo was like, we're going to do it ourselves. That's the last we heard. Like, I have not been updated on this for quite some time. So circumstances might have changed. I'm not withholding the possibility that maybe they found someone else to take the reins. Maybe it'll be a co-production. Maybe it'll be, okay, we have this idea, but you take it from here. We're just far too busy making all the Mario games to focus on Donkey Kong. There's always possibility, and I have not been briefed on anything. Last I heard, though, that was not the case. So,
a user in our live stream who calls themselves Donkey Kong Freedom, funnily enough.
Oh yeah,
summed it up pretty succinctly. They said DK fans gained nothing today, but nothing was lost.
Nothing was lost, and we are in great shape as a fandom. I know that's weird to hear, considering it's been 10 years since Tropical Freeze was announced. But do I want to walk out of the big, not E3 Nintendo Direct, the June Direct, the Summer Direct, winter if you're in the Southern Hemisphere? Hello to all of our Australian, New Zealand, South of Africa, South America, Antarctica listeners. We don't have any listeners in Antarctica. I've checked.
Ega forever, Australians.
Yeah. Do I want to walk out of that big Direct, the historically biggest Direct out of the year, with absolutely nothing to talk about and continual uncertainty in the air for Donkey Kong? I feel bad leaving out Star Fox from this discussion, but let's be honest. Star Fox wasn't in the discussion. Hell fucking no, Josh, and excuse my salty language here, but no, I wanted stuff to talk about today. I wanted kernels, at least, small little seeds to run out to my garden and plant. I wanted stuff to glom onto and to provide content for DK Vine and fuel for my fandom for months to come.
Yeah, the version of events where I saw that Mario RPG trailer, they said, and Mario's not the only one getting a new game, and then Donkey Kong was revealed. That would have shattered my psyche, but in a good way. So
I think that would have been one of the most anticlimactic ways you could have revealed it, though. Oh,
I see. Yeah.
Oh, and Mario's not the only one getting a new game. Here's fucking Donkey Kong. We don't care.
We guess.
Yeah, no, you gotta build up to it, right? It's what is it called? Edging? Yeah, that's what you got to do for Donkey Kong. You would take that to the bank. You can put that on a bumper sticker.
That's what Nintendo's doing to Donkey Kong fans right now.
And it's going to be spectacular once the moment of release comes, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I say I'm not day drinking, but let's be honest. I've been day drinking. Something's coming, Josh. And had Donkey Kong been put into something like Skylanders again, had he been put into one of the farming simulators that's, never present factor in these Nintendo Switch Directs, then yeah, maybe my faith would be faltering just a teensy little bit. But baby, I'm calmer than Funky Kong walking the streets of Amsterdam right now. I am chill. And look, in the meantime, we have Lego Donkey Kong to look forward to in August. I realize that's not everybody's forte. I realize that people are like, I don't care about this ancillary stuff. I care about a video game. And I feel you, and I get that. But Lego Donkey Kong is not nothing. It means something, even if it's just something to placate us on the road to the next Donkey Kong game.
And that's the thing. We've talked about this on... I feel like we've been talking about this for years at this point. But it's just there's so much smoke, there's got to be fire.
And at this point, it's really hard to breathe. Like, I've been inhaling this smoke for so long, I'm wheezing on the floor. Things are getting black.
But yeah, like, you can say, okay, well, like, I guess the argument, the bad faith argument that you could make would be like, well, yeah, you didn't see Donkey Kong, but you didn't see Star Fox either, and that doesn't mean a new Star Fox is coming. Yeah, but Star Fox isn't getting a theme park expansion. Star Fox isn't getting a major role to play in the Mario movie. We're not getting Lego Star Fox. And I say this as somebody who absolutely loves Star Fox and wishes we were getting that. But it's just the mass of DK ephemera that is out there indicate, and the fact that nothing, like we said before, nothing in this direct would serve to in any way replace a Donkey Kong game indicates there's something coming. There is some fire to this smoke.
Yeah, I don't want to keep playing the theme park card because I realize people are getting tired of it. It only goes so far, but you're right. Like, I said this in my social media screed, and I'll say it again. F-Zero is not getting a multi-million-dollar international theme park expansion that sits side by side with Mario as a, like, separate thing, right? Like, this isn't just more Mario because it's Donkey Kong. This is the Donkey Kong side of the park. And you're seeing that in all the branding. You're seeing that in even the Lego Donkey Kong product in the Super Mario line. They are still branding it as its own unique thing, Donkey Kong, with its own logo there. That's not something they afford to. Even Luigi's Mansion, like, Luigi's Mansion doesn't have the Luigi's Mansion logo on there. It might have, like, they might give the box a different color scheme slightly, but it's still the same branding. And, they're going out of there's a reason why Donkey Kong isn't just a part of the Mario brand and hasn't actually been a part of the Mario brand since roughly 2018. We've been chasing this smoke for 5 years now, and we're getting closer to the fire. We're not there yet, but, like, you look at all of this stuff, and look, we still have the possibility of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, of a Kong fusion in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, like Diddy and Funky, or Diddy and Dixie, or the Donkey Kong track that's been data mined. Like, we still have that possibility, and I've seen people speculate, what if we get a Donkey Kong Direct? Like, what if they're saving everything? Like, the last Booster Course Pass, the Donkey Kong game, Diddy Kong Racing, this, that, and the other. A look at the theme park, like a preview of the theme park, a reveal of the Donkey Kong movie, which probably wouldn't happen with the writer's strike going on. We're probably not getting any movie reveals for any substantive amount of time until that's resolved. And then we have the looming SAG strike, and, like, Hollywood's a mess right now. People, like, don't put any cards in any of the Illumination stuff at the moment. But
Hey man, it's LA.
I won my Emmy right before the last writer's strike, and that pretty much derailed my career.
Jeez.
Because I could not ride that momentum into anything because there was a massive, 4 to 5 month stretch where nobody, of course, you couldn't be hired or you'd be a scab. So,
sure, yeah.
Yeah, that sucks. I'm here with you talking about Donkey. I wouldn't change anything. I love it. Anyway,
I'm glad. I'm happy to have you here.
Yeah, so Donkey Kong fan community. Honestly, I feel good after this. We dodged the bullets, and it means that our time is closer than ever. We can't hear it coming yet, but at least we can smell the smoky aroma of the fire. So, yeah, this is probably the best direct where I have absolutely nothing to show for it, and I'm happy about that.
I'm very, like I said earlier, man, I'm really glad you're happy. I'm really glad you're okay. I'm really, it's a little touch and go. There were things about this direct that made me very emotional, but I could not put out of my head, like, oh man, I hope Hyle's doing okay.
I'm glad I'm a constant source of worry for everyone.
No, not like that at all.
Yeah, no, I'm actually really good right now, Josh, but
I'm glad.
That being said, if Playtonic would like to announce a new game right now, it would be a really swell time.
This has been a File 2 production.
¡Qué rico!